Poor mother gives up her meal for her daughter, the billionaire CEO, witnesses, and does the unthinkable. You won't believe what happened. When the little diner was quiet that afternoon, with sunlight streaming weakly through the dusty windows, casting faint golden rectangles across the worn wooden tables. The smell of fried potatoes and cheap coffee hung in the air. It was the kind of place that felt forgotten by the world, where the clinking of cutlery and quiet murmurs of patrons formed the only soundtrack. Clara sat across from her daughter Sophia, who was barely 7. The girl's small hands trembled slightly as she held the fork, her brown eyes wide with hunger. Clara had been saving every cent for days to buy a simple meal for the two of them. She ordered the cheapest plate on the menu, a small portion of rice, beans, and a piece of grilled chicken. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford. As the food arrived, Clara felt the familiar pang of worry. She watched Sophia's eyes light up at the sight of the steaming plate. Her daughter had been patient all day, smiling despite the gnawing hunger in her stomach. Clara's heart twisted painfully. She knew she couldn't let her daughter eat less than she deserved. Without thinking, she scooped a larger portion onto Sophia's plate. "Here, baby, eat well," she said softly, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Sophia's face brightened, and she started eating eagerly, unaware of her mother's silent suffering. Clara pushed her own plate away. She wouldn't touch a bite. The hunger clawed at her belly, but she clenched her jaw. Her daughter came first, always. At that exact moment, a man sat in the corner of the diner. Tall, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, with golden hair combed perfectly back, he observed the scene in silence. Leonardo Valenti, a billionaire CEO known for his ruthless business acumen, sipped his coffee as he watched Clara's selfless act. Something stirred inside him, something he hadn't felt in years, something human. He had seen power, money, and influence all his life. He had sat in boardrooms where millions were won or lost with a single word. But this was different. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the mother and child, mesmerized. The woman's sacrifice, the way she put her child's happiness above her own, struck him like a thunderbolt. Clara, unaware of the stranger's gaze, tried to smile at Sophia as she finished her portion. "You're full now, baby?" she asked gently. Sophia nodded, cheeks puffed with rice and chicken, oblivious to her mother's hunger. Clara's stomach growled. She pressed her lips together to silence it. She would wait until later, maybe skip dinner entirely. It didn't matter. Sophia's laugh, the sparkle in her eyes, it was nourishment far greater than any meal could provide. Leonardo couldn't tear his eyes away. He was used to being in control, accustomed to commanding respect and authority. But here, in this simple diner, he felt powerless, not because of money or influence, but because of the raw, unfiltered humanity in front of him. He had never seen anyone sacrifice so completely, and it unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. The child looked up at her mother, her mouth smeared with sauce, eyes full of innocence. "Mom, you're not eating?" she asked softly. Clara smiled weakly. "I'll be fine, baby. You eat first." She forced herself to focus on Sophia, ignoring the twisting pain in her own stomach. Leonardo stirred in his seat, the coffee cooling in his hand. He had witnessed many things in his life, acts of greed, betrayal, even kindness, but nothing had prepared him for this. This small act, unnoticed by the world, had pierced the armor he wore so carefully. He made a decision, though he didn't yet understand why. He would do something. Something bold, something unthinkable. The mother and daughter shared a quiet moment, laughter mingling with the clatter of dishes around them. Leonardo watched as Clara carefully folded her hands in her lap, smiling faintly, pretending she was content. And in that instant, he realized that some acts of courage, some gestures of love, are far more powerful than any fortune or title. He didn't yet know how he would act. All he knew was that he had been a silent witness to a sacrifice that would change the course of all their lives, and his own, in ways no one could imagine. And so, in the corner of that humble diner, a billionaire CEO decided that a single, unplanned act of humanity could outweigh all his years of control, wealth, and power. The world outside remained indifferent, but here, in this small, sunlit diner, something extraordinary had begun. Leonardo Valenti left the diner that afternoon with an unfamiliar weight pressing on his chest. The city streets buzzed around him, cars honking, people rushing, but his mind remained fixed on the small mother and child he had just witnessed. Clara, that was her name. He had caught it whispered to the waiter as she had asked for a refill of water. And the little girl, Sophia, her bright eyes and innocent smile, had left an imprint in his memory that no boardroom or luxury office had ever managed. The CEO had built his empire on numbers and strategy, on cold, calculated moves that earned him billions. Deals, contracts, mergers, acquisitions, everything was predictable. Everything except that moment. That moment was chaotic, raw, and infinitely human. He hadn't felt this way in years, perhaps never. He didn't even know why he felt compelled to act, to step out of his world of comfort and influence into one that was so fragile, so real. He drove back to his penthouse, a sleek high-rise overlooking the city, its glass walls reflecting the fading sunlight. From this height, the world looked small, insignificant even. Yet down in that tiny diner, a mother's love had made an impact larger than anything money could buy. Leonardo paced the polished floors of his office, suit still immaculate, thoughts racing. How could one act, so simple, so human, shake him so deeply? He tried to distract himself, checking emails, reviewing quarterly reports, but the images refused to leave him. Clara's tired eyes, the way she smiled through the hunger gnawing at her, the gentle way she encouraged Sophia to eat. And Sophia herself, unaware of her mother's silent suffering, laughing and enjoying the meal as though the world held nothing but kindness. Leonardo's chest tightened. He realized he had been living a life devoid of this, pure, unselfish love. The next day he found himself returning to the diner, though he claimed otherwise to himself. He needed to see them again, not as a wealthy stranger, but as someone who understood the magnitude of what he had witnessed. Clara wasn't there at first. The place seemed smaller, quieter than yesterday, the sunless morning light casting long shadows across the worn tables. Leonardo sat in the same corner, a coffee cooling beside him, and waited, his thoughts tangled between curiosity and an unspoken desire to help. When Clara finally walked in, carrying Sophia by the hand, Leonardo's breath caught. Her eyes, tired but resolute, scanned the room, and for a moment she seemed completely unaware of him. Her presence was a mix of strength and vulnerability, a paradox that fascinated him. The child, Sophia, tugged at her mother's skirt, pointing eagerly at the food counter. Clara knelt, smoothing her daughter's hair, whispering something that made Sophia giggle. Leonardo observed silently, unsure of how to approach without frightening them. He realized then that he didn't just want to help in a conventional sense. He wanted to know them, to understand their world, to be part of it. Yet he couldn't simply barge in, flashing wealth and authority. Clara's dignity had been evident, her pride intact, despite hardship. He had to be careful. He had to earn the chance to step into their lives. The hours passed as Leonardo remained in the corner, a silent witness to their small routines, Sophia eating happily, Clara carefully dividing their limited portions, laughing softly at some small joke her daughter made. Each smile, each tender gesture etched itself into Leonardo's mind. He had seen power wielded many times, but he had never seen it wielded like this, without pretense, without agenda. He had seen love in business deals, in contracts, in acquisitions, but never like this, raw and human. By the time he left, Leonardo had made a decision. He would find a way to help them, not with charity that humiliated, not with gifts that created dependence, but with something real, something that could change the trajectory of their lives without stripping them of pride. He didn't yet know how, but the resolve had taken root, firm and unyielding. Driving away, He glanced at the city skyline, the same streets and buildings that had always been his domain. And yet, for the first time, he felt powerless against something far greater than money or influence. He felt powerless against the force of a mother's love, the resilience of a woman who put her child above herself. And in that realization, Leonardo knew his life, his empire, even his heart would never be the same again. The day had begun as any other, routine and predictable, but by the time night fell, one simple act of sacrifice had ignited something extraordinary. Leonardo Valenti, billionaire CEO, had become a man on a mission not for profit or fame, but for justice, compassion, and perhaps even love. The following week, Leonardo found himself wandering the streets of Clara's neighborhood without a clear destination. The city's skyscrapers loomed in the distance, symbols of wealth and power that had always defined his life, yet he felt strangely detached from them. His mind, instead, was consumed by thoughts of Clara and Sophia, the mother and daughter whose lives had briefly intersected with his own, leaving a mark he could not ignore. He had asked discreet questions, inquired subtly about the small diner, and eventually learned that Clara volunteered at a local community shelter during the mornings. Determined, Leonardo decided to visit, not as a wealthy benefactor flaunting his fortune, but as someone genuinely interested in understanding her world. He needed to see the life she led firsthand, to witness the struggles and the resilience that had captivated him so deeply. The shelter was modest, with faded paint and worn benches, but it radiated warmth and hope. Children played quietly in a corner while volunteers distributed food and essentials to families in need. Leonardo stepped inside, feeling conspicuous in his tailored suit and polished shoes, but determined to blend in. He introduced himself simply as a visitor, wishing to help with donations, careful not to reveal his identity as the billionaire CEO he truly was. Clara noticed him immediately, though she did not recognize him. Her attention was divided, as usual, between organizing the supplies and keeping an eye on the children. When he approached, her initial instinct was caution. She had learned to trust few people, especially strangers bearing gifts. "Can I help you?" she asked politely, her eyes scanning him carefully. I want to help," Leonardo said softly, feeling awkward in this unfamiliar environment. "I heard about the shelter, and I thought I could contribute in any way that's needed." He avoided mentioning the diner, afraid it might come across as manipulative or intrusive. Clara studied him for a long moment, her gaze sharp yet curious. She could sense sincerity, or at least something beyond the usual condescending gestures she was accustomed to receiving. "I appreciate that," she said finally, softening slightly. "We can always use volunteers to help distribute food and organize supplies. Come this way." She led him to a small storage room where boxes of canned goods and clothing were stacked haphazardly. As they worked side by side, Leonardo observed her carefully. She moved with a quiet determination, her hands deftly sorting items, speaking gently to the children, her laughter rare but genuine. He felt a growing admiration, realizing that this was strength beyond what money could buy. Sophia, as if sensing his presence, ran up and took his hand without hesitation. "Hi, are you helping too?" she asked brightly, her eyes filled with curiosity and innocence. Leonardo smiled awkwardly, unprepared for the directness of the child's affection. "Yes, I am," he replied, kneeling to her level. Sophia beamed, and Clara's lips curved in a subtle smile, recognizing in this stranger a warmth she rarely encountered. Hours passed as Leonardo immersed himself in the shelter's activities. He lifted boxes, helped distribute meals, and even played with the children in the small yard outside. By the time the sun began to dip behind the buildings, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a quiet connection had formed. Clara had begun to relax in his presence, treating him as someone present and genuine rather than another passerby. Yet Leonardo remained cautious. He knew he was stepping into a delicate balance. He could not overwhelm them with his wealth or status. His influence had to be subtle, earned, and respectful. What drew him to them was not merely a desire to help, it was something more profound, a connection that transcended power and privilege. Before leaving, Leonardo knelt and looked Sophia in the eyes. "I'll come back soon, all right?" he promised, unsure whether she would remember him, yet compelled to create a sense of trust. The child nodded eagerly, and Clara, observing the interaction, felt a strange mixture of curiosity and unease. There was something unusual about this man, a presence that felt both comforting and disruptive, like a gentle storm entering their lives. As Leonardo walked away from the shelter, he felt a rare sense of purpose. For the first time in years, his actions were not dictated by profit or obligation, but by something entirely new, compassion. And though he did not yet know how or why, he sensed that this unexpected encounter with a mother and her daughter would change the course of his life forever. Outside, the city continued its relentless rhythm, unaware of the quiet transformation occurring in one corner of the world. Inside, Clara and Sophia returned to their routines, unaware that the stranger who had appeared so briefly in their lives would become a presence they could never forget. And somewhere high above, in a world of wealth and power, a billionaire CEO had begun to see the value of humanity in ways no boardroom could ever teach. Clara's life had never been easy, but the weight of her struggles seemed heavier now than ever. After dropping Sophia off at the small schoolhouse that morning, she sat on a cracked bench near the playground, watching her daughter play with other children who seemed carefree, their laughter ringing like music in the crisp morning air. She envied them, not for the toys they had or the meals they could afford, but for the freedom they carried, the freedom to exist without the constant gnaw of worry and fear. Her thoughts drifted back to the day that had changed everything. 3 years ago, she had been married to a man named Raphael, who had been her world. They had dreamed of a simple life together, a home filled with love and laughter, perhaps even a garden where Sophia could run freely. But fate had other plans. Raphael had died suddenly in an accident that left Clara alone and penniless, with only the weight of grief and responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Since that day, Clara had become a master of survival. Every coin mattered, every meal was a careful calculation, and every opportunity was a chance to protect her daughter from the hardships of the world. She took on multiple jobs, cleaning homes, selling handmade goods at markets, volunteering at shelters, anything that could keep Sophia fed and clothed. Her pride often wrestled with necessity. She hated asking for help, yet she did what she had to. Sophia was everything to her. When the girl smiled, Clara felt a spark of hope, a light in the darkness that reminded her why she continued to fight. Every sacrifice she made, every empty stomach she endured, every sleepless night spent worrying was for her daughter. And yet, there were moments when exhaustion and despair threatened to consume her. On those nights, she would sit by the small kitchen window, Sophia asleep in the next room, and silently pray for guidance, for a miracle, for anything that could ease their suffering. The memories of Raphael's death still haunted her. She remembered the phone call, the frantic rush to the hospital, the cold, sterile room where she had been told that he was gone. The grief had been suffocating, almost too much to bear, and yet, even in the depths of despair, she had found strength. For Sophia's sake, she could not crumble. Every morning, she forced herself to rise, to put on a brave face, and to continue the daily battle against poverty and uncertainty. Clara's encounters with people like Leonardo were rare, and she instinctively guarded her heart. She had been disappointed, betrayed, and dismissed before, and the thought of relying on a stranger, especially one from a world so foreign, filled her with cautious hesitation. Yet something about him lingered in her thoughts. The way he had observed her without judgment, the quiet respect in his gaze, had left a mark. It was unsettling, yet strangely comforting, like a gentle wind brushing against her worn spirit. That evening, after returning from her various jobs, Clara prepared a simple meal for herself and Sophia. The apartment was modest, with peeling paint on the walls and a small battered table where they ate. She portioned the food carefully, ensuring Sophia received enough while she took the smallest share, pushing down the gnawing hunger in her stomach. This ritual had become second nature, a silent, daily act of love. As Sophia ate, chattering about her day at school, Clara smiled softly, trying to hide the exhaustion etched into her features. She longed for a life where her daughter would never have to face hunger, fear, or insecurity. Every decision she made, every ounce of effort, was aimed at creating a future where Sophia could thrive without sacrifice. And yet, she knew that alone, her resources were limited. The world was vast, and she was just one woman fighting against it. It was in these quiet moments that she reflected on the fragility of her existence and the resilience she had cultivated. Each hardship, each challenge, had shaped her into the person she was, a mother willing to endure anything for the happiness and well-being of her child. And though her path was lonely, her determination was unwavering. Clara was a woman of quiet courage, strength forged in the crucible of loss and love, and nothing, not even the world's indifference, could diminish that. Little did Clara know that her life was about to intersect with Leonardo's in ways that would challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, love, and destiny. The world she had navigated alone for so long was about to change, and the sacrifices she had made would set the stage for something extraordinary, something she could never have imagined in her most hopeful dreams. Clara's life had never been easy, but the weight of her struggles seemed heavier now than ever. After dropping Sophia off at the small schoolhouse that morning, she sat on a cracked bench near the playground, watching her daughter play with other children who seemed carefree, their laughter ringing like music in the crisp morning air. She envied them, not for the toys they had or the meals they could afford, but for the freedom they carried, the freedom to exist without the constant gnaw of worry and fear. Her thoughts drifted back to the day that had changed everything. 3 years ago, she had been married to a man named Raphael, who had been her world. They had dreamed of a simple life together, a home filled with love and laughter, perhaps even a garden where Sophia could run freely. But fate had other plans. Raphael had died suddenly in an accident that left Clara alone and penniless, with only the weight of grief and responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Since that day, Clara had become a master of survival. Every coin mattered, every meal was a careful calculation, and every opportunity was a chance to protect her daughter from the hardships of the world. She took on multiple jobs, cleaning homes, selling handmade goods at markets, volunteering at shelters, anything that could keep Sophia fed and clothed. Her pride often wrestled with necessity. She hated asking for help, yet she did what she had to. Sophia was everything to her. When the girl smiled, Clara felt a spark of hope, a light in the darkness that reminded her why she continued to fight. Every sacrifice she made, every empty stomach she endured, every sleepless night spent worrying was for her daughter. And yet, there were moments when exhaustion and despair threatened to consume her. On those nights, she would sit by the small kitchen window, Sophia asleep in the next room, and silently pray for guidance, for a miracle, for anything that could ease their suffering. The memories of Raphael's death still haunted her. She remembered the phone call, the frantic rush to the hospital, the cold, sterile room where she had been told that he was gone. The grief had been suffocating, almost too much to bear, and yet, even in the depths of despair, she had found strength. For Sophia's sake, she could not crumble. Every morning, she forced herself to rise, to put on a brave face, and to continue the daily battle against poverty and uncertainty. Clara's encounters with people like Leonardo were rare, and she instinctively guarded her heart. She had been disappointed, betrayed, and dismissed before, and the thought of relying on a stranger, especially one from a world so foreign, filled her with cautious hesitation. Yet something about him lingered in her thoughts. The way he had observed her without judgment, the quiet respect in his gaze, had left a mark. It was unsettling, yet strangely comforting, like a gentle wind brushing against her worn spirit. That evening, after returning from her various jobs, Clara prepared a simple meal for herself and Sophia. The apartment was modest, with peeling paint on the walls and a small battered table where they ate. She portioned the food carefully, ensuring Sophia received enough while she took the smallest share, pushing down the gnawing hunger in her stomach. This ritual had become second nature, a silent, daily act of love. As Sophia ate, chattering about her day at school, Clara smiled softly, trying to hide the exhaustion etched into her features. She longed for a life where her daughter would never have to face hunger, fear, or insecurity. Every decision she made, every ounce of effort, was aimed at creating a future where Sophia could thrive without sacrifice. And yet, she knew that alone, her resources were limited. The world was vast, and she was just one woman fighting against it. It was in these quiet moments that she reflected on the fragility of her existence and the resilience she had cultivated. Each hardship, each challenge, had shaped her into the person she was, a mother willing to endure anything for the happiness and well-being of her child. And though her path was lonely, her determination was unwavering. Clara was a woman of quiet courage, strength forged in the crucible of loss and love, and nothing, not even the world's indifference, could diminish that. Little did Clara know that her life was about to intersect with Leonardo's in ways that would challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, love, and destiny. The world she had navigated alone for so long was about to change, and the sacrifices she had made would set the stage for something extraordinary, something she could never have imagined in her most hopeful dreams. Clara had always prided herself on her independence. Every opportunity she seized had been hard-won, every job a battle to survive, every small victory a testament to her resilience. She never expected, nor did she desire, that someone like Leonardo Valenti, the billionaire CEO who seemed untouchable and entirely out of reach, would step into her life. Yet that morning, she found herself facing the most unexpected proposition she had ever encountered. The shelter had just finished distributing the morning meals. Children ran around the yard, laughing and shouting, while volunteers cleaned up and organized supplies. Clara wiped her hands on a faded towel, preparing to leave for her cleaning job at a nearby building, when Leonardo approached her. His navy blue suit was immaculate, his posture precise, yet there was a softness in his expression that immediately caught her attention. "Clara," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I hope I'm not intruding, but I need to speak with you." She frowned slightly, her instincts on alert. Who are you?" she asked cautiously. Leonardo paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He wanted to convey sincerity without arrogance. "My name is Leonardo," he said simply. "I've been following the work you do here, and I think you're extraordinary. I want to offer you a job, something meaningful, not charity, something where you can make a real difference." Clara blinked, taken aback. A job? From him? Her mind raced. She had never experienced such an offer from someone like Leonardo. Most people of his stature either ignored her world entirely or offered help in a way that felt condescending. But there was no arrogance in his tone, no hint of pity. He was serious, and she sensed it. I don't know what to say," Clara stammered. "I don't want charity. I just want to take care of my daughter." Leonardo shook his head gently. "This isn't charity," he insisted. "I'm offering you a real position in my company. Your dedication, your intelligence, your ability to care for others, those qualities are rare. I want you to bring them to my organization. You'll have autonomy, respect, and the chance to shape programs that help people like the ones you care for every day." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She had worked tirelessly to support Sophia, never imagining that her skills, her compassion, and her determination could be recognized by someone from a world so different. Part of her hesitated, wary of the potential consequences. What did he really want? Was this just another opportunity to exploit her? But the honesty in his gaze, the patience in his tone, and the subtle kindness that radiated from him calmed her fears, if only slightly. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "There are so many people who could do this." Leonardo smiled faintly, his eyes meeting hers. "Because I saw something in you that cannot be taught. You've survived hardships, you've sacrificed for someone else, and yet you remain kind, strong, and true. I've never seen anything like it. That is exactly the kind of person I need." Clara took a deep breath, weighing her options. Accepting the job would mean entering a world she barely understood, leaving the fragile comfort of her routines and exposing herself to the scrutiny of people like Isabella, the CEO's ex-girlfriend and a woman known for her cruelty. Yet the opportunity to provide Sophia with a future free from constant fear, the chance to make a real difference for others, and the possibility of finally standing on her own feet, it was too significant to ignore. I'll think about it," she said finally. Leonardo nodded, understanding her caution. "Take your time," he replied. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer, but know this, I believe in you, and I want to help you succeed on your own terms." As he walked away, Clara watched him leave, her mind swirling with uncertainty and possibility. This encounter had already shaken her world, and she knew that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Leonardo Valenti's offer was more than a job. It was a doorway to a future she had only dreamed of, a future where survival was no longer the only goal, and where love, hope, and opportunity might finally find a place in her life. That night, as she prepared a small meal for Sophia, Clara reflected on the encounter. She felt a strange mix of fear and hope, uncertainty and excitement. One thing was certain: this opportunity could alter the course of their lives forever, and though she did not yet understand how or why, Clara sensed that meeting Leonardo Valenti was only the beginning of a journey neither of them could have predicted. Clara's first day at Leonardo Valenti's company was nothing like she had imagined. The building itself was a gleaming tower of steel and glass, reflecting the sun in sharp, blinding angles. Inside, marble floors, glass walls, and sleek modern furniture spoke of a world she had only glimpsed from afar, a world defined by power, wealth, and precision. It was dazzling, intimidating, and utterly foreign. As she walked through the hallways, clutching her simple bag, she felt the stares of employees. Sharp, curious, some even dismissive. Whispers floated through the air. "Who is she? Why is she here? Does he really intend to hire her?" Clara's heart raced, but she forced herself to stand tall. She was determined not to let their judgment define her. She had survived far harsher challenges. A few suspicious looks were nothing compared to the struggle she had faced to feed and protect her daughter. Leonardo greeted her personally, guiding her to a private office. His presence was commanding yet gentle, and he took time to explain her responsibilities. She would manage a new outreach program designed to help underprivileged families, a task perfectly suited to her experience and compassion. The position came with autonomy and respect, but also scrutiny. Clara knew she would have to prove herself in a world that measured worth by status and wealth rather than by character. The first week was a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and adjusting to the pace of corporate life. Clara quickly noticed the subtle tension among staff, especially from Isabella, Leonardo's ex-girlfriend. Isabella had a sharp, polished demeanor and a reputation for wielding influence with precision. From the moment she noticed Clara, her gaze was critical, evaluating, almost predatory. She whispered to colleagues behind Clara's back, questioning her competence, her background, even her worthiness to stand beside Leonardo. Despite the subtle hostility, Clara remained composed. She drew strength from her past, the years of struggle, the sacrifices made for Sophia, the resilience that had carried her through adversity. She approached each task with diligence, each challenge with patience, and gradually she began to earn the quiet respect of a few open-minded colleagues. But she knew that trust, especially in this world, was not easily given, and she would have to navigate every interaction carefully. Leonardo observed her closely, noticing the grace with which she adapted, the quiet strength she displayed in the face of skepticism. Unlike the others, he did not see her as an outsider or a challenge to his authority. He saw her as an equal in compassion and vision, someone capable of making a difference. He admired the way she handled herself, balancing professionalism with humanity, a skill far rarer than intelligence or ambition in his world. Outside the office, Clara faced an equally delicate balance. She had to maintain her life as a mother, ensuring Sophia's needs were met, while juggling the responsibilities of a high-profile position. It was exhausting, but she managed it with careful planning, a strong will, and the constant reminder of why she worked so tirelessly, her daughter's happiness and security. Yet, the world she now straddled could not be entirely reconciled. At home, she returned to modest meals and small comforts. At work, she was surrounded by luxury, strategy, and wealth unimaginable to her past life. The contrast was stark, often jarring, but Clara navigated it with quiet dignity. She refused to be humbled by opulence or intimidated by power. She remained steadfast, guided by the same values that had defined her existence since Raphael's death: love, sacrifice, and integrity. Evenings were particularly challenging. Returning home after long days, Clara would prepare dinner for Sophia, ensure her daughter completed homework, and check on bills, all while mentally reviewing the day's events at the company. She felt stretched thin, yet fulfilled in a way she hadn't experienced in years. There was purpose in her struggle, a sense of progression, and somewhere in the background, Leonardo's presence lingered, a subtle but undeniable force influencing her life in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. As the days passed, Clara began to understand that being part of Leonardo's world was not merely about work or money. It was about trust, courage, and navigating a space where human values were tested against ambition and influence. And as she stood in her small apartment one night, looking at Sophia sleeping peacefully, she realized that these two worlds, her humble past and the wealthy present, could coexist, shaped by her strength and guided by her heart. Little did Clara know that this delicate balance was just the beginning. The challenges of her new life, the conflicts with powerful figures like Isabella, and the deepening connection with Leonardo were only the first steps in a journey that would test her resilience, redefine her understanding of love, and ultimately change her destiny forever. The invitation had arrived unexpectedly, sealed with elegance and addressed to Clara in a handwriting that was precise yet personal. Leonardo Valenti requested that she and Sophia join him for dinner at his residence that evening. Clara hesitated, balancing a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had never stepped into such an extravagant world before, and the thought of presenting herself, her simple clothing and modest demeanor, in front of someone like Leonardo was daunting. Yet she could not deny the curiosity that burned within her. When they arrived, the mansion loomed like a fortress of luxury, sprawling and grand. Marble columns lined the entrance, and gardens glimmered with meticulous care under soft lighting. A valet greeted them, ushering Clara and Sophia inside. Clara's heart pounded as they entered the grand hall, walls adorned with expensive paintings and crystal chandeliers that reflected a dazzling light across the room. She felt small, almost insignificant, but also acutely aware of her role as a mother, determined to carry herself with grace. Sophia's eyes widened with awe at the sheer beauty surrounding them. She clutched her mother's hand, whispering excitedly, "Mom, it's like a castle." Clara smiled, feeling a surge of protectiveness and pride. "Yes, baby, but remember, we belong to our own world too," she whispered back, hoping to keep her grounded even as they navigated the unfamiliar elegance. Leonardo greeted them warmly, his demeanor effortless yet commanding. He knelt slightly to Sophia's level, smiling softly. "Welcome," he said. "I'm so glad you could join me tonight." Sophia beamed and immediately took to him, a connection forming as naturally as if they had known each other for years. Clara felt a mixture of relief and gratitude, noting how comfortable her daughter appeared in his presence. Dinner was served in a lavish dining room, the table perfectly set with crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and fine china. Despite the opulence, Leonardo made a deliberate effort to make Clara and Sofia feel at ease. He engaged them in conversation, asking about their days, interests, and hopes, never once flaunting wealth or status. Clara was surprised by the sincerity in his questions, the genuine attention he paid to both her and her daughter. As they ate, Clara observed Leonardo more closely. He was attentive, kind, and surprisingly unpretentious. It was as if the grandeur of the mansion did not define him. Rather, he used it as a backdrop to create a moment of warmth, humanity, and connection. She realized that despite his wealth, he had preserved the ability to be grounded, compassionate, and emotionally intelligent, a rare trait among the people she had encountered from his world. Sofia, curious and exuberant, asked Leonardo countless questions, each answered with patience and humor. Clara watched the two interact, her heart swelling with gratitude and a hint of awe. Here was a man who could have anything, yet he chose to care about them, to make them feel seen and valued. It was a gesture of kindness that transcended material wealth. It was emotional, personal, and deeply meaningful. As the evening progressed, Clara began to feel a subtle shift within herself. The walls she had built, forged from years of hardship and skepticism, were beginning to soften. She sensed that Leonardo's interest was not fleeting or superficial, but rooted in genuine admiration and respect. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a life where opportunity, security, and even love could coexist with her current struggles. By the time dessert was served, a delicate chocolate torte accompanied by fresh fruit, Clara realized how rare this moment was. She was not being judged for her past or her circumstances. Instead, she was being acknowledged for her strength, her character, and the love she gave unconditionally to her daughter. And in that acknowledgement, she felt a flicker of hope, a promise that life could offer more than survival. When they finally left, Sofia asleep in her arms, Clara reflected on the night. Leonardo had shown them a world so far removed from their own, yet had made them feel as though they belonged. The experience had changed something inside her, a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and cautious excitement. She understood now that her life was no longer confined to hardship. Doors were opening, and the choices she made next could shape a future she had only dared to dream about. For Leonardo, the night had been equally transformative. Watching Clara navigate the unfamiliar elegance with dignity and grace, seeing the bond between mother and daughter, he felt an even deeper pull toward them. The dinner had not been merely a meal. It was a bridge between two worlds, a step toward a connection that neither wealth nor circumstance could define. And in that connection, both their lives were beginning a journey toward something extraordinary, something neither of them could have anticipated. The invitation had arrived unexpectedly, sealed with elegance, and addressed to Clara in a handwriting that was precise yet personal. Leonardo Valenti requested that she and Sofia join him for dinner at his residence that evening. Clara hesitated, balancing a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had never stepped into such an extravagant world before, and the thought of presenting herself, her simple clothing and modest demeanor, in front of someone like Leonardo was daunting. Yet she could not deny the curiosity that burned within her. When they arrived, the mansion loomed like a fortress of luxury, sprawling and grand. Marble columns lined the entrance, and gardens glimmered with meticulous care under soft lighting. A valet greeted them, ushering Clara and Sofia inside. Clara's heart pounded as they entered the grand hall, walls adorned with expensive paintings and crystal chandeliers that reflected a dazzling light across the room. She felt small, almost insignificant, but also acutely aware of her role as a mother, determined to carry herself with grace. Sofia's eyes widened with awe at the sheer beauty surrounding them. She clutched her mother's hand, whispering excitedly, "Mom, it's like a castle." Clara smiled, feeling a surge of protectiveness and pride. "Yes, baby, but remember, we belong to our own world too," she whispered back, hoping to keep her grounded even as they navigated the unfamiliar elegance. Leonardo greeted them warmly, his demeanor effortless, yet commanding. He knelt slightly to Sophia's level, smiling softly. "Welcome," he said. "I'm so glad you could join me tonight." Sophia beamed and immediately took to him, a connection forming as naturally as if they had known each other for years. Clara felt a mixture of relief and gratitude, noting how comfortable her daughter appeared in his presence. Dinner was served in a lavish dining room, the table perfectly set with crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and fine china. Despite the opulence, Leonardo made a deliberate effort to make Clara and Sophia feel at ease. He engaged them in conversation, asking about their days, interests, and hopes, never once flaunting wealth or status. Clara was surprised by the sincerity in his questions, the genuine attention he paid to both her and her daughter. As they ate, Clara observed Leonardo more closely. He was attentive, kind, and surprisingly unpretentious. It was as if the grandeur of the mansion did not define him. Rather, he used it as a backdrop to create a moment of warmth, humanity, and connection. She realized that despite his wealth, he had preserved the ability to be grounded, compassionate, and emotionally intelligent, a rare trait among the people she had encountered from his world. Sophia, curious and exuberant, asked Leonardo countless questions, each answered with patience and humor. Clara watched the two interact, her heart swelling with gratitude and a hint of awe. Here was a man who could have anything, yet he chose to care about them, to make them feel seen and valued. It was a gesture of kindness that transcended material wealth. It was emotional, personal, and deeply meaningful. As the evening progressed, Clara began to feel a subtle shift within herself. The walls she had built, forged from years of hardship and skepticism, were beginning to soften. She sensed that Leonardo's interest was not fleeting or superficial, but rooted in genuine admiration and respect. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a life where opportunity, security, and even love could coexist with her current struggles. By the time dessert was served, a delicate chocolate torte accompanied by fresh fruit, Clara realized how rare this moment was. She was not being judged for her past or her circumstances. Instead, she was being acknowledged for her strength, her character, and the love she gave unconditionally to her daughter. And in that acknowledgement, she felt a flicker of hope, a promise that life could offer more than survival. When they finally left, Sophia asleep in her arms, Clara reflected on the night. Leonardo had shown them a world so far removed from their own, yet had made them feel as though they belonged. The experience had changed something inside her, a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and cautious excitement. She understood now that her life was no longer confined to hardship. Doors were opening, and the choices she made next could shape a future she had only dared to dream about. For Leonardo, the night had been equally transformative. Watching Clara navigate the unfamiliar elegance with dignity and grace, seeing the bond between mother and daughter, he felt an even deeper pull toward them. The dinner had not been merely a meal. It was a bridge between two worlds, a step toward a connection that neither wealth nor circumstance could define. And in that connection, both their lives were beginning a journey towards something extraordinary, something neither of them could have anticipated. The revelation of Raphael's accident hung heavily in the air between Clara and Leonardo. For hours, they sat in his office, the silence thick, each trying to process the weight of the truth. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the sleek desk. Her mind raced with anger, sorrow, and a hesitant flicker of curiosity. Leonardo, meanwhile, felt the pull of responsibility and the fragile thread of trust stretching between them. "I don't know if I can forgive this," Clara said finally, her voice low yet unwavering. "It's not just about my husband. It's about the years of struggle, the the sleepless nights, the sacrifices I had to make alone. Her words resonated with raw authenticity, and Leonardo nodded, understanding the depth of her pain. "I know," he said quietly, "and I don't expect forgiveness immediately, or even easily. All I can do is try to make things right moving forward. I want to honor your husband's memory and help you build a future for you and Sophia that you deserve. No shortcuts, no pity, just support." Clara studied him carefully. She had spent years relying only on herself, trusting few and leaning on no one. Yet there was something in Leonardo's tone, in the way his eyes conveyed sincerity and humility that made her pause. He wasn't offering wealth as a bandage. He was offering acknowledgement, action, and respect for her life and the life she fought to protect. The days that followed were tentative, filled with cautious steps toward understanding. Leonardo implemented new initiatives in his company to address the injustices connected to Raphael's accident. He worked tirelessly to ensure the shelter received increased funding, better resources, and long-term stability. Clara oversaw the projects, her hands and heart fully invested. She began to see a side of the billionaire CEO that few ever witnessed, one capable of humility, accountability, and profound empathy. Sophia noticed the changes as well. She delighted in the small moments, new toys at the shelter, healthy meals, and the presence of someone who genuinely cared about their family. She would tug at her mother's hand and ask, "Mom, is he a good man?" Clara would pause, sometimes struggling to answer, because trust was fragile and human hearts complicated. Yet slowly, she began to see in Leonardo something more than a wealthy stranger. She saw a man willing to step into their world with respect and integrity. Their interactions were still formal at the office, but warmer and more human. Leonardo invited Clara to share her insights during meetings, asking for her advice on programs affecting families like hers. She discovered that her lived experience carried weight in a world she had previously thought impenetrable. Each suggestion she made, each decision she influenced, reinforced a sense of purpose and power she had not felt in years. Outside the office, Leonardo made deliberate gestures to connect without overwhelming. He would send Sophia small gifts, books, educational toys, little trinkets, and always with a note emphasizing learning, curiosity, and imagination rather than wealth. He invited Clara to private discussions about their shared projects, subtly reinforcing that her opinions mattered and that she had autonomy, not charity. Through it all, Clara's trust grew cautiously. She was aware of the complexities of their worlds and the potential pitfalls, but she could not deny the pull of his integrity, his consistent respect, and the quiet kindness that accompanied even the smallest gestures. The woman who had once survived alone, guarding her heart fiercely, began to allow herself a glimpse of connection, possibility, and hope. One evening, after a particularly long day of planning the shelter's next initiative, Leonardo walked Clara and Sophia to the car. The sun was setting, casting warm golden light across the city streets. Sophia ran ahead, laughing, while Clara paused to watch her daughter. Leonardo stood silently beside her, giving her space, yet offering a steady presence. "Thank you," Clara said softly, almost to herself. Leonardo turned, meeting her gaze. "For what?" he asked gently. "For believing in me, for seeing us, for caring," she replied. For a moment, there was nothing else but mutual understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement that trust was beginning to form. Not easily, not fully, but enough to plant the seed of something extraordinary. And in that quiet moment, both realized that the past, no matter how painful, did not have to define their future. Together, carefully, cautiously, they were beginning to build a new story, one where honesty, compassion, and trust could flourish, and where love, though still fragile, was possible. Not everyone welcomed Clara's sudden presence in Leonardo's world. While she worked diligently and earned respect from some colleagues, there were those whose pride and jealousy could not be contained. Isabella, Leonardo's ex-girlfriend, had been watching Clara with quiet hostility since her arrival. A woman used to control, influence, and admiration, Isabella felt threatened by the newcomer, a woman from a completely different world who had captured not only Leonardo's attention but also his respect. The tension began subtly. Whispered comments in hallways, sharp glances during meetings, and subtle undermining of Clara's suggestions. Isabella questioned every decision, challenged every initiative, and tried to instill doubt among other staff members. "Are you sure she's qualified?" she would whisper to colleagues. "Her background is unusual for this environment." The words were designed to sting, to provoke uncertainty, and to highlight the differences between Clara's humble origins and the corporate elite. Clara, however, remained steadfast. She had survived a life filled with hardship, loss, and struggle. No amount of office politics could shake her focus or determination. She addressed Isabella's challenges with calm professionalism, relying on her competence, knowledge, and innate ability to understand the needs of the people her project served. Each time Isabella tried to intimidate or belittle her, Clara's quiet confidence stood firm, a silent reminder that strength came in many forms. Leonardo noticed the growing tension and felt a protective impulse he had not expected. He had always handled challenges through strategy, authority, or negotiation, but this situation required something different. He needed to ensure that Clara was supported without undermining her independence or dignity. He met with Isabella privately, his voice calm but unwavering. "Your role here is clear," he said. "Respect and professionalism are expected. If you cannot maintain that, there will be consequences." Isabella's eyes flashed with indignation, but Leonardo's reputation and authority ensured her compliance, at least outwardly. Despite these challenges, Clara began to flourish in her role. She implemented programs to provide shelter children with educational materials, nutritious meals, and opportunities for enrichment beyond the classroom. Her compassion, resourcefulness, and insight allowed her to make significant changes, earning quiet admiration from colleagues who had initially doubted her. Children who had once struggled now had a chance to thrive, and Clara's influence expanded beyond her own life to touch countless others. Sophia too began to notice the difference. She could see her mother growing stronger, more confident, and more capable of navigating this new world. She began to ask questions, eager to learn, to understand her mother's work, and to share in the excitement of change. Clara encouraged her curiosity, nurturing her daughter's mind and heart, while quietly reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. The tension with Isabella, however, was far from resolved. Clara understood that jealousy and ambition were potent forces in Leonardo's world, forces that could disrupt even the most carefully laid plans. She remained vigilant, learning to navigate office politics without compromising her values or losing sight of her ultimate goal, to protect Sophia and make a difference for those who needed it most. Leonardo, meanwhile, balanced his roles as CEO, protector, and confidant. He admired Clara's resilience and ingenuity, recognizing the delicate balance she maintained between her new responsibilities and the life she had built for herself and Sophia. He began to understand that the strength of a person's character was revealed not only in triumphs, but in the ability to withstand adversity, and Clara possessed that strength in abundance. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, navigating office tensions and implementing a new outreach initiative, Leonardo invited Clara to a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The skyline was illuminated, a sea of lights stretching as far as the eye could see. "You're extraordinary," he said simply, his voice steady and sincere. "I don't know anyone else who could manage everything you do with such grace and courage." Clara looked down, a mixture of gratitude and humility in her expression. "I just do what I must," she replied softly. "For Sophia, for those who need help. That's all." Leonardo smiled, recognizing the quiet heroism in her words. He realized that in this world of wealth, influence, and ambition, true strength often went unnoticed, but he would ensure that Clara's courage and integrity would never be overlooked again. And so, amid challenges, jealousy, and obstacles, the bond between Clara and Leonardo deepened, not as a product of wealth or status, but as a connection forged through respect, admiration, and a shared commitment to protecting what truly mattered: love, integrity, and family. Life in Leonardo's world was becoming increasingly complex for Clara. While she had begun to find her footing professionally and personally, the realities of corporate politics, jealousy, and societal expectations were far from forgiving. Isabella's subtle manipulations continued, creating moments of tension and forcing Clara to navigate her new life with the precision of a tightrope walker. The first major test came unexpectedly. Leonardo's company was hosting a high-profile charity gala, a night meant to celebrate philanthropy and showcase the company's impact on underprivileged communities. Clara had been invited to attend as a key organizer and representative of the outreach programs she had spearheaded. The thought of attending such an event was both exhilarating and intimidating. She had never stepped into a world of luxury, formal attire, and influential elites. The pressure to perform flawlessly weighed heavily on her shoulders. Sophia, excited for her mother, insisted on helping her prepare. "Mom, you have to look amazing." "Dee," she exclaimed, tugging at Clara's dress. Clara smiled, a mixture of amusement and nervousness crossing her face. She had chosen a simple yet elegant gown, modest enough to feel comfortable, but refined enough to blend into the grand atmosphere of the gala. As they prepared, Clara reflected on how far she had come, from surviving on a few coins a day to now attending an event that could define the future of her programs. Upon arrival, the grandeur of the ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light over the elegantly dressed guests, and the air buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Photographers and reporters moved through the crowd, capturing every detail. Clara felt a flutter of anxiety. Could she navigate this environment without faltering? Would she be respected or judged? Leonardo stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of unfamiliarity. "You'll do fine," he said softly, his hand brushing hers reassuringly. "Just be yourself. That's what makes you remarkable." Clara drew a deep breath, letting his words bolster her confidence. She stepped forward, engaging guests with warmth, knowledge, and humility. She spoke passionately about the outreach programs, sharing stories of children and families whose lives had been transformed. Her sincerity captivated the audience, drawing genuine attention and admiration. However, Isabella's interference was imminent. During a key moment, she approached Clara, her tone dripping with condescension. "Interesting work, but are you sure you're ready for this level of scrutiny?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. Clara met her gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "I've faced challenges far greater than this," she replied calmly. "I know my work, and I know its impact." Isabella's expression faltered slightly, the first crack in her veneer of dominance. Throughout the evening, Clara's competence, grace, and authenticity shone. She managed interactions with influential donors, spoke confidently in front of cameras, and navigated delicate social dynamics without losing her composure. Guests began to recognize her as a force in her own right, not merely a figure connected to Leonardo. Her presence was commanding, yet grounded in genuine care for the people she served. Sophia, who had accompanied her mother, watched from a distance with wide eyes. She felt proud, inspired, and in awe of Clara's ability to stand tall amidst wealth, power, and scrutiny. Leonardo observed the two of them, a mixture of admiration and deep affection filling his heart. He realized that Clara's strength was not only in her resilience, but in her ability to maintain humanity, compassion, and integrity in a world that often rewarded the opposite. By the end of the night, Clara had achieved what few could in such an environment: respect, recognition, and the beginnings of influence. Leonardo approached her as the gala drew to a close, his expression one of pride and quiet reverence. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice low but sincere. You proved that strength isn't measured by wealth or status. It's measured by heart, courage, and integrity, and you have all of that in abundance." Clara smiled, a mixture of relief and accomplishment. She knew this was just the beginning. Challenges would continue to arise, and the path ahead would not always be smooth. Yet for the first time, she felt a profound sense of belonging, a validation that her past struggles had not been in vain. She had earned a place in Leonardo's world, not as a visitor but as a contributor, a protector, and a woman of strength whose heart guided her every step. As the weeks passed, the bond between Clara and Leonardo grew stronger, but it remained unspoken, delicate, and complicated. Every glance, every gesture, and every shared moment seemed to carry a weight neither dared to address fully. The tension between them was palpable, a quiet hum beneath their interactions, creating moments of intimacy filled with longing yet restrained by caution and respect. Clara found herself thinking about Leonardo in ways she hadn't anticipated. She admired his strength, his integrity, and his ability to balance immense power with genuine compassion. She recognized that he had seen her, not just the mother struggling to survive, but the woman she had always been beneath the hardships, intelligent, resilient, and capable of extraordinary empathy. Yet she reminded herself constantly that he lived in a world far removed from hers, a world where expectations, status, and appearances often dictated choices. How could someone like him truly fit into the life she had fought so hard to protect? Leonardo, meanwhile, struggled to contain his emotions. Every encounter with Clara left him yearning for more, yet he understood the fragility of trust and the importance of patience. He respected her independence, her resilience, and her careful boundaries. Yet the pull of desire, admiration, and deep affection grew stronger with every shared project, every smile from Sophia, every quiet moment they spent discussing plans for the shelter or the company's outreach programs. One late afternoon, as the office emptied and sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Leonardo invited Clara to review proposals for a new initiative. The room was quiet, their papers spread across the table, yet neither spoke immediately. They worked in silence, each aware of the subtle electricity that lingered between them. Clara's hand brushed lightly against Leonardo's as she reached for a document, and he paused, savoring the brief connection. The moment was fleeting, yet charged with unspoken meaning. Finally, Leonardo broke the silence. "Clara," he began cautiously, "I need to tell you something. Something I've felt for some time." Clara looked up, her heart fluttering with anticipation and apprehension. "I'm listening," she replied softly, though a hint of uncertainty crept into her voice. "I admire you more than I can express," he said, his tone measured but earnest. "Not just for your work or your resilience or the way you care for Sophia, but for who you are as a person. Every day I see your strength, your compassion, and your courage. And I care about you. More than I should, perhaps, given everything, but I can't help it." Clara felt a rush of conflicting emotions: fear, joy, hesitation, and hope. She had never allowed herself to imagine such affection, yet the sincerity in Leonardo's eyes was undeniable. She knew that her own feelings mirrored his, though she had kept them carefully guarded. I care about you too," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to be careful, for Sophia, for myself, for what this could mean." Leonardo nodded, understanding the weight of her caution. "I know," he said gently, "and I will respect your pace. I will not rush or pressure you. I just want you to know the truth of my feelings, so you can make choices without doubt or uncertainty." The moment was brief, but transformative. The air between them shifted, charged with acknowledgement, connection, and the possibility of love. Both recognized that the path ahead would be complicated, filled with obstacles, scrutiny, and the challenges of bridging two very different worlds. Yet for the first time, they allowed themselves to consider what might be possible: trust, partnership, and a life that could blend ambition, compassion, and love. Later that evening, Clara returned home, Sophia asleep in her arms, her mind swirling with the day's revelations. She felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced in years, a fragile, delicate hope that love could exist without compromising her independence or her responsibilities as a mother. Leonardo's feelings were no longer unspoken, and in that acknowledgement a door had opened, offering a glimpse of a future she had dared not imagine. In the quiet of her apartment, Clara reflected on the journey so far. From loss to resilience, from struggle to unexpected opportunity, her life had been transformed in ways she had never anticipated. And now, with unspoken feelings finally acknowledged, a new chapter was beginning, one that promised love, connection, and the hope that hearts once broken could find a way to heal together. Just as Clara began to embrace the fragile hope blooming between her and Leonardo, an unexpected revelation threatened to shatter everything. It arrived quietly, almost imperceptibly, through a routine report at the company. One of the previous board members had been involved in questionable dealings related to the very community projects Clara was overseeing. These dealings had the potential to compromise not only the initiatives she had worked tirelessly to build, but also the trust of the families depending on her programs. Leonardo called Clara into his office immediately. The gravity of his expression made her pulse quicken. "Clara, we have a problem," he began, his voice steady but tense. "There are discrepancies in the records from previous management, actions that could undermine the projects we've put so much into. I need you to review them carefully. Your judgment is invaluable here." Clara leaned over the documents, her mind racing. Each page revealed subtle manipulations, embezzlement and neglect that could have long-lasting repercussions. Her heart sank as she realized the potential fallout. Families who had relied on the programs might lose access to critical resources. Months of effort, personal sacrifice and progress could be wiped away in an instant. She looked up at Leonardo, who was watching her intently. "We can fix this," he said firmly, "but it will require transparency, courage, and careful strategy." The following days were a whirlwind of investigation, confrontation, and problem-solving. Clara and Leonardo worked side by side, coordinating with legal teams, financial auditors, and trusted colleagues. Clara's knowledge of the community and first-hand experience with the family's needs proved indispensable. She was able to pinpoint the most critical areas of impact, ensuring that corrective measures were implemented without harming those who depended on the programs. Yet the challenge was more than professional. It tested the delicate trust and growing bond between them. Clara felt the weight of responsibility, not only for the families, but also for the relationship developing with Leonardo. Each decision carried emotional stakes. Every misstep could undermine both the programs and the trust between them. Leonardo, aware of her internal struggle, offered steady support, never imposing, always respecting her judgment. Late one evening, after hours of reviewing documents and coordinating corrective action, Clara and Leonardo remained in the office. The room was quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of desk lamps and the city lights outside. The exhaustion etched on Clara's face did not escape Leonardo's notice. "You've done more than anyone could ask," he said softly, his voice carrying both admiration and concern. "I've seen how much you care, how deeply you invest yourself. It's remarkable." Clara looked at him, a mixture of fatigue and gratitude in her eyes. "I can't let them down," she replied. "These families, Sophia, they deserve better than failure. I've worked too hard to let this fall apart now." Leonardo nodded, understanding that her determination was born not of ambition, but of love and responsibility. "And you won't fail," he reassured her. "Not while we face this together." That night, as Clara returned home, she reflected on the day's events. The revelation had been frightening, almost paralyzing, yet it also reinforced her own strength. She had confronted challenges far greater than corporate manipulation, navigated loss and survival, and protected her daughter through unimaginable hardships. The obstacle before her now, though formidable, was merely another test of resilience, courage, and unwavering commitment. In the quiet of her apartment, Clara considered the journey she had undertaken. From losing Raphael to surviving alone, from meeting Leonardo to discovering opportunities she had never imagined, her life had been a series of trials that had forged an unbreakable strength. And now, facing this new challenge, she understood that she was not alone. Leonardo's presence, support and respect had become more than guidance. They were a partnership, a shared commitment to protect, heal, and rebuild. The revelation, though dangerous, had strengthened the bond between them. Together, they faced uncertainty with courage, determination, and the understanding that the trials ahead, while daunting, could be overcome if they acted with honesty, integrity, and heart. And in that knowledge, both Clara and Leonardo felt a renewed sense of purpose, a promise that the path they were forging together, though fraught with obstacles, was one they would walk side by side. The journey had been long, filled with trials, revelations, and the slow, careful weaving of trust and understanding. Clara had faced loss, hardship, and the weight of survival, yet through it all, she had maintained her compassion, courage, and unwavering dedication to her daughter and the families she served. Leonardo had observed, supported, and admired, growing alongside her in patience, respect, and profound affection. Now, at the culmination of their shared journey, everything converged: truth, trust, love, and the possibility of redemption. The final challenge emerged in the form of a critical board meeting. Investors, executives, and philanthropic leaders gathered to assess the company's initiatives, many skeptical of the new projects Clara had implemented. Isabella had subtly encouraged doubts among several influential attendees, questioning both the feasibility and the oversight of the programs. Clara understood that this meeting was more than a professional hurdle. It was a test of her integrity, her competence, and the trust that had begun to blossom between her and Leonardo. She entered the boardroom with quiet determination, Sophia's laughter and innocent encouragement echoing in her mind. She began presenting the data, stories, and tangible impacts of the outreach programs. She spoke not as a subordinate, not as a charity recipient, but as a capable leader, as someone whose insight and heart had transformed countless lives. Every word carried conviction, every example demonstrated measurable success, and every story resonated with the audience, drawing admiration and support. Leonardo observed from the head of the table, pride and admiration etched into his face. He knew the stakes were high, yet he also knew Clara's capabilities, the depth of her commitment, and the authenticity that set her apart. Isabella attempted to interject, her criticisms sharp and calculated, but Leonardo's subtle glance reminded her that her influence was limited. Clara handled each question with grace and intelligence, dismantling doubts with clarity and empathy. By the end of the meeting, the room had shifted, from skepticism to belief, from doubt to respect. Afterward, as the boardroom emptied, Leonardo approached Clara, taking her hand gently. "You did it," he said softly. "You've not only proven your strength and integrity, but you've also shown everyone the power of heart and resilience. I'm incredibly proud of you." Clara's eyes glistened with emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied quietly, understanding that their partnership had been as much emotional as professional. That evening, Leonardo invited Clara and Sophia to the rooftop garden of the company building. The city stretched out below them, a sea of twinkling lights and endless possibilities. The cool night air carried a sense of calm and promise, a perfect setting for the moment that had been building silently between them. "Clara," Leonardo began, his voice gentle yet certain, "these months have shown me more than I ever imagined. You've taught me the true meaning of courage, love, and integrity. I care for you deeply. I want to be part of your life, with Sophia, with you, in a way that respects everything you fought for and everything you are." Clara looked at him, the vulnerability she had guarded for so long surfacing. I care for you too," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But I've spent my life protecting my heart and my daughter's. This is new, and I need to be sure that it's real." Leonardo nodded, his expression tender and understanding. "It's real," he said simply. "No shortcuts, no grand gestures, just honesty, respect, and commitment. Together, we can build something genuine." Sophia, sensing the shift between them, ran forward and hugged both of them. Her laughter and joy were the final confirmation that love, patience, and trust could coexist across worlds that had once seemed impossible to reconcile. In that moment, the three of them, mother, daughter, and man who had become family, stood together, united by resilience, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. As the city lights shimmered below, Clara realized that her life had transformed in ways she had never dared to imagine. From loss and sacrifice to opportunity and love, every hardship had led her to this moment. She had survived, thrived, and discovered that even in a world of wealth and influence, the greatest power lay in heart, courage, and the willingness to embrace love and redemption. And for Leonardo, the billionaire CEO, he had discovered something far more valuable than power or wealth. A connection that transcended status, a love forged in trust and respect, and a chance to be part of a family he had never imagined he could belong to. Together, they faced the future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them side by side, with love, courage, and unbreakable determination. The past had shaped them, but the present had given them a choice, and together they chose hope, love, and the promise of a life built on heart.